ability to share it with you after. It is going to be a lot of information, so don't get overwhelmed. But it's important to understand how the loan works. And if you wanted to share it with anyone that you think would qualify, we could definitely send out the recording to them as well if they couldn't make it. So, and I'm here with Linda. We'll have her introduce herself in just a second. And so what we're going to go over, just really quick, reality of rent versus buy, how to start the process, and then Dream for All. And like what Linda was saying is if the Dream for All program doesn't work for you for some reason, there are other down payment assistance programs specifically for California that we could go over as well. So you're here probably because you're tired of renting, right? And you want to start investing and gain equity. So rent goes up, right? So we know that on average, when people are renting from a place, their landlord usually increases the rent a certain percentage. It's risen by about 85% in the past 20 years, right? So the idea is to get you to stop paying someone else's rent and start investing and gain equity for yourself. Um, Appreciation. So appreciation in a home is wealth that you're building when you own a home. It's long-term wealth building. And so it's a way for people really to build generational wealth. And you can kind of see the chart as it goes up, especially in San Diego. We don't have a problem of appreciation. I think on average, what is it, Linda, like 3 to 4%
At least,
in
yeah.
San Diego. So, and if people are in other parts of California, California as a whole generally appreciates consistently. So that's the idea is showing you how to build wealth. This is just a quick overview of the home buying process in general. So you're going to reach out to an approved mortgage lender. You're going to fill out an application securely, and you can do that a couple of different ways depending on the lender. You'll provide your documents, which we'll go over. And then as a lender, we go over options with you and then connect you to the real estate agent, which would be Linda Lee in this example. And then they're going to put you on a search based on what your comfort level is when we've gone over numbers as far as your budget for a monthly payment, which is really important. And then you're going to go home shopping, which is the fun part that you get to do. And it seems so easy, but it really is. If you're working with a great team, this process is fairly simple and efficient, and will guide you every step of the way. So this is a QR code. You have all my information in the bag. So what's needed for a pre-approval? And it's really pretty easy. If you are a W-2 or pay stub employee, we just need to cover your income for the last 30 days. So if you're paid every 2 weeks or bi-monthly, it would just be two most recent pay stubs. Your last 2 years of W-2s, and we don't need full tax returns unless you're self-employed. So a lot of times people think they have to provide that, but it's only if you are self-employed as well. And the 2 months bank statements. So the California Dream for All and down payment assistance programs do give assistance, but sometimes it doesn't cover everything. So you may have to come in with a small amount of money, and your lender will go over that with you. So generally, this is going to be able to show us that you have the ability to do that. You can also put up to 5% of your own funds into the California Dream for All program as well if you wanted to get your payment lower. That's an option, and we're going to go through that in a second. So the qualification documentation is actually quite simple. Knowing how much you can afford. So this is where I spend a lot of time with people because, I could tell you that you could afford $6,000 a month, but in reality, with other expenses, you can really afford 4,000. So it's really important for you to talk with a lender and have them understand what your budget is, not just from your income, because we use your income before taxes, right? But you're paying your bills after taxes. So make sure you really understand what you can afford on a monthly basis and partner with a top real estate agent, right? So, and Linda, I don't know if you want to just talk for a second about some of the things that you do when you're working with your client or.
Sure. I'm Linda. I have been a San Diego resident for over 42 years, in real estate almost 24 years, and I always believe in serving clients' best interests, no matter what price point they're buying. And that's why my goal is to help some future homeowners to utilize California Dream program. And then, it's number one is get a pre-approved with a lender and really know what price point you're comfortable buying. And then, we'll structure your home shopping strategy and we negotiate for in your best interest. I'm very straightforward when I help my clients about what they should buy or the property you like, pros and cons. And of course, you as a home buyer are the boss. We are here to provide you real estate advice and to help you to make the best buying decision for yourself.
Absolutely. And Linda's contact information, you'll have it. And if you don't have it, we'll provide that to you very easily. So let's talk about the California Dream for All. So you're really sharing the growth of the appreciation of the home with the state of California. It's a true partnership, and it really helps people skip that down payment hurdle that most people have. It's really hard with affordability in San Diego County, especially to come up with 20% down, right? Plus closing costs if you're a first-time home buyer. So this helps alleviate some of that for people. You're entering the market 20% down on day one. It's conventional financing, which is one of the best types of programs that you can get. And if you do 20% down, you're also avoiding mortgage insurance, which is not common for a first-time home buyer. So that's why this program is really special, and why the money goes so quickly, right? Because so many people want to get in for that. So the state of California will provide up to 20% down payment assistance, the lower of the appraised value or the sales price, but the maximum is 150,000, right? So if your price point is 800,000 and 20% of that is 160, we would only use 150. That's the maximum that's allowed. And it's an appreciation share program. So that's really important to understand. And we're going to go over how that exactly works in a live scenario of what that appreciation share looks like with the state of California. And it's really, California is bullish on real estate, right? They're coming out with this program because they believe that homes are going to continue to appreciate. And so they wouldn't do a program like this unless they expected to get their money back at some point, plus a percentage of the home's appreciation. So it's really the state of California investing in property with you. Here's some things that you should know. So you want to definitely get pre-approved. Really, the goal is before March 1st to avoid a last minute rush of information. And we're going to go over some of the things that you need to upload to the portal. It opens from the 24th of February to March 16th, and it's a lottery system, which the date is to be determined. Minimum FICO score is a 680. So I don't deter people if you think your credit score is lower than that. We have ways that when we do a soft credit pull, it could tell us how you could improve your credit fairly quickly. So if someone has a 640 credit score, I'd be able to tell if they did X, Y, and Z, how many points they could improve and how fast. So if you have below a 680, don't be discouraged. That's just kind of like a guideline that we follow. Again, it's 20% or 150,000 max. So we just wanted to do an example of someone. Let's say the price point was 1,150,000, and you were able to come up with 5% of your own funds. This program would work for you, right? Or if you were coming in with your own closing costs and Linda was able to negotiate a credit from the seller, the price would be about 900,000. Okay. But if you weren't doing any of those things, it would be 750,000, right? Because 20% of that is 150,000. So your price point would be about 750,000 or below, to not have to come up with those with your own down payment funds. It's for first-time home buyers only. Now, there are other programs if you're on the Zoom call, or here that you've owned a home in the last 3 years. If you don't qualify for this, there are other programs where you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. They don't give as much money, but there are options out there. And you could use 5% of the 20% towards your closing costs. So that's important to know. And you're going to check with your lender because a lot of times down payment assistance programs do have a cost to do the program. So that's going to be factored into the closing costs, and you could use 5% of the 20%. If that's the case, then you're putting only 15% down payment, right? And the other 5% is used towards closing costs. Now, this comes up a lot. This is something that's really unique to this program. That's really not something that we ever ask on any other down payment assistance program. And it's, are you a first generation home buyer? One person on the loan must meet this definition. So if you're husband and wife, or if you're sisters or whatever it is, only one person has to be a first generation home buyer. And it's defined as someone who has not owned a home or been on title to a property in the last 7 years, and their parents do not currently own a home presently in the United States. Okay. Um, Again, or person's been placed in foster care, institutional care. So there's some guidelines, right? If there's unique situations for people, that's why you talk to a lender, because we're going to ask you these questions and make sure that you would meet this guideline. So first time home buyer is something different than first generation home buyer. So you have to meet both qualifications. Okay. And so that's what a first generation buyer is. And again, if you have questions, we'll answer them at the end. So first time home buyer is defined as someone who hasn't owned or occupied their home in the last 3 years, and you have not lived in a home owned by a spouse in the last 3 years. If it's more than 3 years ago, you're considered a first time home buyer. Okay. So both people on the loan have to be a first time home buyer, but only one person has to be first generation. Okay, so there's some confusion on that. So, and again, if you're not sure, we would just go through your history and understand if you meet those guidelines. The Dream for All shared appreciation has income limits depending on the county in California that you're buying in. So San Diego County has a total income limit for the year, and this is your gross income before taxes for the household of $207,000. So if your income exceeds that, then we would need to look into a different type of program that might be available for you. Now, let's say, for example, you get base income and overtime and bonus and commission. Um, we average a lot of those things out. So it may not mean that we're using all of that income that you're getting, right? So again, as a lender, we'll pre-screen your income. We'll look at it with an underwriter ahead of time. That's what we do, and then determine what your income limit is. And you can see if you're in other counties like Riverside County or Contra Costa County, the income limits are different. And this is all public information. So if you just looked at California Dream for All or, Fannie Mae income limits, this is what's going to show for everybody. So it's a fair playing field for anyone. So some additional criteria: you need to occupy the property as a primary residence, and you aren't able to have a non-occupant co-borrower. So a lot of times what happens is, someone buys a home and their parent co-signs for them. That's not going to live in the house, but we can use the parent's income to help qualify. This program doesn't allow that. So anyone that's going to be on the loan needs to be occupying the home as their primary residence. All people must be on title that are on the loan. So sometimes people want to add someone to the title of the property, even though they're not on the loan. And you can't do that with this program. It's going to follow Fannie Mae's guidelines for citizenship. If you're a permanent resident alien, or if you're non-permanent resident alien, if you have proof of employment authorization, we would get that from you. And also, if you're buying a condo, it's important that the condo is also approved with Fannie Mae. And myself as a mortgage lender, I have access directly to Fannie Mae's condo portal, and I'll check for my buyers to ensure that the condo is Fannie Mae approved before they write an offer. So you're required to take an online home buying course. And so I don't know if any of you have done this yet, but when you go on the website for California Dream for All, there's a free course that you would need to take before your information can be submitted into the lottery. Okay. The link to that course is on their website. If you get chosen from the lottery, there's another home buying course that you have to take that's $100, but you're taking it knowing that you were chosen in the lottery. So for now, if you want to get prepared to have your information go into the portal, you're going to want to at least take the free home buying course. And the link is on their site, or I could provide that to you as well. You're allowed to buy a single family residence, a condo, a townhome, and even manufactured homes are allowed to be purchased. They just can't be mobile. They have to be fixed to the foundation of the ground, and it can't be a multi-unit because a two-unit usually someone's investing, right? It has to be one of those other property types. And this is like, some terms that you may not be aware of, but a seller concession, uh, it's not too common in our market, right? Because San Diego is a hot market, but sometimes, the real estate agent like Linda could negotiate with the seller and ask for a concession, which could help go towards your closing costs. And that's something that you will work with Linda on depending on, how long the property's been on the market, the location, the price. And we could do buy downs and things like that. And then you need to have a home warranty. So usually in a real estate transaction, that's optional. With this specific program, you would want to have a home warranty. And I believe, Linda, in most cases, you negotiate that
Yep.
by the seller, or is that?
We have a seller pay for the first year home warranty.
Okay, so that's something that's usually standard anyway, right?
I'll
In our,
request that.
okay.
I'll ask seller to pay.
Perfect. Okay. So it's something on this program that you're going to have. So let's talk about the appreciation share. So you're going to give back the 20% that they gave you for that down payment. And again, if it's regular income. So there's regular income. And so AMI stands for that area median income. Okay. If someone's income is 80% of that total 207, they're in a kind of different bracket. And so they have to pay back less of the 20%. Okay. So we'll go through that once we cash flow your income. I don't want to confuse people. And I also don't want to get people excited thinking they don't have to pay back the whole 20%. So assume you're going to pay back the whole 20%, and then you're going to pay back 20% of the appreciation. So it's not the equity that you're building, it's the appreciation of the home. And we're going to go through a calculation so you could understand what that looks like. It's capped though at 2.5 times the amount of the second lien for the appreciation share. So let's say you use this program and you only have to pay it back if you sell or refinance. But let's say you've lived there for 20 years and your home has appreciated hundreds of thousands of dollars. It caps it at 2.5 times the amount of that 150,000. Okay, so that gives you some protection. Here's an example. So let's say you take a $500,000 sales price, and it's 20% of that, then you would get $100,000 to go towards your down payment and closing costs. So even though they advertise 150,000, you'd get the lower of the two. Okay. Let's say you were to sell your home or refinance, and the home went from $500,000 and now it's worth $700,000. Okay. So that means it appreciated $200,000 from the time that you bought it to the time that you're refinancing or selling it. 20% of that is 40,000. So if you go to sell or refinance, you're going to pay back Cal HFA, California Housing Finance Authority, the original 100,000 plus the 40,000. Okay, so it's 140,000 total that you would pay back to them. Now, sometimes people are like, "Oh, I have to pay them back money." The way that I look at it is you get to keep the other 80% of appreciation that you would have never had by renting or not using this program. So this is the way that you're also building wealth, and that the state of California is getting money back from their investment. Okay. And you're going to need to pay that back regardless if you're in the house for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So that's an example. And then we're going to go through, and it says regular example because that is when your income is not at that 80% mark. If you're in a lower income bracket, and you still qualify, then the example is a little bit different because you're paying back less appreciation, right? It's a 0.75 factor. So you'd end up paying back 110,000. And again, we could do this based on your actual price point that you're buying in, but this is how the calculation works. And again, I can answer questions at the end. So the Dream for All process is a little bit different. You're going to get qualified with your lender. Usually your lender will only do a soft credit pull. That's what you'll want to make sure of because our credit reports are only good for 4 months. And we don't know, you have until March We don't know when they're going to pull the lottery. And then you have 90 days before you have to get into contract. So we don't want your credit report to expire and have another ding on your credit. So we'll do a soft pull up front. We're going to get your documentation, and then we're going to prepare the pre-approval letter, which I'll show you what that looks like. You're going to gather the documents needed on your end, and then you're going to go to CalHFA and you're going to upload those documents into their portal. We cannot upload that for you. You are going to have to do it yourself as the consumer. And I'll show you an example of where that is. You have to register in the portal between February 24th to March 16th and upload your documents. And then you're going to complete the registration process in their portal. I can't show you what that looks like yet because we can't get into it yet either until the 24th. So that's just the idea of how the process goes. This is what the pre-approval letter looks like. So something really, really important is you have to make sure that the lender you're working with is approved with Cal HFA. And so hopefully they know if they're approved or not. But I would just make sure you're asking that question. Okay, so on the letter, they're going to say who they are, the loan officer's company, my name would be my license number, my email, whatever borrower is going to be on the loan. We have to list the purchase price. Now, if you're unsure, this is where we come up with that together based on your affordability, right? So if you say, hey, Tracy, my comfort level is $5,000 a month total, including taxes and insurance and HOA. I work backwards and say, your sales price then is this. Okay. And that's the conversation I have with my clients. So that would be the purchase price, first mortgage, the Dream for All subordinate loan amount. That's that money they're giving you, right? The 150,000, 120,000, whatever it is. And then your total combined income. So they're requiring us to put that in there. So you want to make sure your lender did really look at your income, right? And not just give you this letter without asking you for your W-2s and your pay stubs or your taxes. Because if they did it wrong and you think you're in the lottery, you're not gonna get chosen. And that's what happens a lot is people upload their stuff and their lender doesn't approve them correctly. And if they get chosen, they're not going to give you the money if you don't truly qualify. They're always going to look at our documentation and the way we cash flowed your income and make sure that it matches what they're saying. So they don't just go, oh, you're in here, cool. Like they're going to verify everything. So it's really important to make sure you're working with someone. I have to certify that I'm an approved lender, and then I sign and date that, and then I provide that to you, and you're going to upload that into the portal. If down payment assistance with the California Dream for All isn't an option for you, most mortgage lenders have a lot of the same programs. We at Supreme Lending have some of our own programs for down payment assistance, but there's some other things that you could do. It's not 150 grand, right? This is like the best amount of money that you could get, but there are options that can give up to 5%, 3%, 6%. So depending on what you need.